Welcome to our Friday edition of NewsWire here on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish. For the next hour, we inform, educate, and give you the latest news, notes, and information around the sports betting universe and also the business aspect, TV streaming, everything. We cover it all here on NewsWire as well. Also, some great guests. Coach Young is going to preview the NBA playoffs with us coming up. We got the full slate of games this weekend, so stay on the grid with us for that. Also, Jim Gazzale from Legal Sports Report, latest revenue in from a couple of different states. We'll break that down for you. Also, the NFL draft, less than a week away. Matt Lutovsky from the Sporting News weighs in on who goes 1, 2, and 3. Seems like there's some shifting in the odds, so you may want to stay with us for that to find out what those are. But we start off with the National Football League and a reinstatement for several players who were suspended by the National Football League last year. 3 ex-Lions players, wide receiver Quinton Cephas, safety C.J. Moore, defensive lineman Demetrius Taylor, also ex-Colts linebacker Rashad Berry, and Commanders edge Shaka Toney have had their active statuses restored to the NFL over the sports betting controversy that they had this past year. Defensive back Isaiah Rodgers also was suspended last year for the 2023 season. He was not reinstated, so we'll have to see what his future holds there. By the way, 2 other Lions, Jamison Williams, you may remember, and Stanley Berryhill, they received 6-game suspensions for gambling indiscretions at the time, and then returned to play the rest of the NFL season. So that's the latest there with sports betting and players, and it seems like that's a daily topic here on our show. Also a daily topic from now through June, it's the NBA playoffs. Of course, the play-in games tonight, do-or-die situations. Sacramento Kings on the road, minus 1.5-point favorites at the New Orleans Pelicans. The winner of this game gets the Thunder in the first round. The Pelicans beat the Kings 4-0 in the regular season with an average margin of victory of 15 points. Zion is out. Malik Monk is out. New Orleans is 7-5 when Monk is out, and yes, they're 4-7, including their first play-in game. So we will see what ends up happening with that tonight. Now, the Chicago Bulls, of course, will travel to Miami to take on the Heat. Jimmy Butler is not going to play in this game, so the line has shifted from -3 to -1.5. Also, Terry Rozier out of this game as well. If the Heat wins, they take on the Celtics. Same could be said for the Bulls. They went 2-2 during the regular season. They played 4 times. That's the latest tonight in the East. Now, as far as the West is concerned, we've got another showdown of sorts. Will it be competitive? I think that's what the NBA is hoping. They would hate to see LeBron James swept again. The Lakers will take on the Nuggets this weekend. Denver is 7.5-point favorites going into this matchup. Last year in the Western Conference Finals, the Nuggets beat them 4-0. Every game was close. So that is the hope this year. But going into the playoffs, there's no question that everybody is trying to take the crown from Mike Malone. He's the head coach of the Denver Nuggets and said his team has to be on guard for that.
For me, I think it's the approach and just understanding that, come Saturday, there are 15 other teams that want what we have. And we have the World Championship trophy, and everybody's trying to take it from us. So last year, we didn't have that. We were a 1 seed, and we had the 1 seed wrapped up for a while, and we went into the playoffs kind of very hungry and trying to do something special. But now you win a championship, and now comes a very hungry Laker team who's pissed off that we've beaten them 8 straight times.
And LeBron James also involved in this series, of course, trying to get back to the NBA Finals, maybe even win another championship with the Los Angeles Lakers. And basically LeBron saying that this matchup, despite the fact that they've lost to Denver so many times recently, is not personal.
It shouldn't be personal at all. I think you allow yourself to get away from the game plan when you make it too personal. We have a game plan. You go out there and execute it, and you live with the results. I'm kind of the last person you should. I just stay even keel. I've been in the postseason way too long in my career to know that you don't get too high off of game one or get too high over whoever the matchup is. You got to just stay even keel. There's going to be a lot of swings throughout the course of a game, throughout the course of a series, and it's how long you can just keep your mind even keel and keep the main thing. So they're a great team. We know what we're capable of, but the game is not won in the transcripts. The game is won in between the 4 lines, and that's all that matters.
And we will see what happens with LeBron as they take on the Denver Nuggets this weekend. Now, in Major League Baseball yesterday, we saw the debut of top prospect Jack Leiter for the Texas Rangers. It did not go particularly well. He struck out the first batter he faced, but then had a hard time lasting just 3 2/3 innings, allowing 7 runs and 8 hits with 3 walks and 3 strikeouts. The Rangers, by the way, were able to win that game. They came back and they won 9-7. Aroldis Chapman has been suspended for a couple of games. He was supposed to play this weekend, and obviously that's not going to happen. He was ejected by home plate umpire Edwin Moscoso after giving up a 2-run double. They're calling it inappropriate actions, whatever that means. How about in college baseball? You don't see this in the majors, the minors, or anywhere else. A player on the Florida Gators has hit a home run in 8 straight games. We'll see what happens tonight. Jack Caglione, 8 straight games with a home run. He's a member of the Florida Gators college baseball team. We'll see if he can make it 9. One afternoon baseball game today. It is the Miami Marlins visiting Wrigley Field, taking on the Chicago Cubs. Okay, now, as far as sports betting numbers are concerned, let's get to the very latest, and let's get to Missouri, of course, looking to legalize sports betting, hopefully for them soon, so they can get off all the illegal ways to do it, because people are still betting there as well. A Missouri sports betting initiative passes 300,000 signatures for its initiative to put the question of legalized sports betting on the November ballot in the state. The group needs to send 180,000 valid signatures to the Missouri Secretary of State by May 5th to get the question on the ballot. It plans to have about 325,000 signatures at that time. If the initiative succeeds, it plans to tax sports betting revenue at 10%, which is a pretty low number considering what we've seen all the other states tax. And tax revenue also would benefit state public education funds. Missouri Gaming Commission would regulate sports betting at that time. Pennsylvania, meanwhile, has posted $800 million in a sports betting handle for the month of March. Of course, that's an astronomical number. The Keystone State, $800 million in sports betting, third highest announced in March, only behind New York and New Jersey. Meanwhile, as we head over to Louisiana, they see a 40% year-over-year growth in their handle for March as well. $350 million is the number for Pennsylvania. That's up 40% from 2023. Operators in Louisiana making money off parlays, in-play wagering, same-game parlays, and certainly this is the wave of the future, but naturally a lot of the other states in the South do not have legalized sports betting, and so Louisiana taking advantage of that for the time being. Also in the National Hockey League, the playoffs are set. They begin tomorrow. The number 1 overall seeds in the East, the New York Rangers, and the Dallas Stars are the number 1 in the West. Tomorrow, we will have the Islanders taking on the Hurricanes and the Bruins taking on the Maple Leafs, and we will have, of course, that and all of the NBA action covered for you on In Game Live this weekend with Major League Baseball action, golf, United Football League action, if that's your thing. Plenty of sports to go over this weekend, in addition to fantasy sports today, which we will cover Major League Baseball and the NFL Draft. That's tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Eastern with myself, and George Kurtz is in the house for Davis Maddox tomorrow. All right, we'll take a quick time out here on our program. Matt Lutovsky joins us to talk about the latest line movements for the NFL Draft. There's been some movement in number 2 and number 3. What does it mean? We'll break it down for you next. This is NewsWire on SportsGrid every day, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern. And we'll be back after these quick messages to break down the draft next.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It's when he swung it easy at 3/4 golf swings, and he pretty much hit his number all the time. Dude, but when he hit something full, he hit it 20 yards over the greens at times. He's like, what are you doing?
He's just smiley, happy, and a freakish athlete golf robot that's going to be right there winning majors for the next 10-plus years. It's amazing.
Did you say he was smiling or smiley?
Only on SportsGrid.
They're still the best. They're still the champs. Everyone wants to crown the Celtics the champions, but that's not the way it works. They got to beat them. And, they got to get through the East, which isn't going to be fun to begin with. Everyone thinks it's so automatic.
If it's just Boris is kind of losing his power, if whatever his tactics have been, yeah, move on.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
We talked about the Ohtani story. This interpreter, Ipe, clearly was a problem gambler. I mean, he would be identified as that and beyond. Now, there are a lot of others that are out there.
The timing didn't seem great. It seemed slightly tone deaf in terms of, maybe now isn't the time to say it. But the sentiment itself, you have to agree with. There's only so much a sports betting company can do, right?
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
NewsWire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from three on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live, prime time.
We got not one, but two coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage Late
Sort
Night.
of has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish back with you along with Matt Lutovsky from Sporting News. We're going to go over the very latest of the NFL draft. We've seen the odds shift at the top. What does it mean? Let's see if Matt knows, because I certainly don't. Matt, kind of an unusual situation here with less than a week to the draft. I know we're going to see some shifting around, but Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, okay, that was the top three that was supposed to be at minus 135. And we're like, okay, we're accepting of that. Now, all of a sudden, plus money on that.
Victor Hovland right now can probably hit it right where he's looking on the range. But the problem is when you get out to a golf course, especially like Augusta National, it's a big, big picture. You can see every shot in the world, but the targets are really, really small.
I feel like whoever we pick is going to win. Like, I feel like we have the power to choose the winner of the tournament.
I know. I'm surprised more guys haven't reached out.
And they might, and they probably will.
Only on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Jason Tatum has games where he has stinkers. He shoots a 4 for 16. Jaylen Brown in the playoffs gets exposed because he can't go left. Porzingis gets old. Sometimes Jrue Holiday's not consistent. Al Horford father time to catch up. That being said, I still think they're going to the NBA Finals and winning it. And I'm a Knicks fan. I hate the Celtics with all of my might.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Memphis owns it. They beat them 5 straight times. And Memphis is awful. So what does that say about the Bucks? They're the most overrated team in the NBA, hands down.
Michigan and Boston College, there's going to be goals scored in this game. But, with that being stated, the total's up to 7.5 right now. I got to go under 7.
Welcome back to NewsWire. Sorry for those technical difficulties. Let's bring in Matt Lutovsky from Sporting News. Thanks for sticking with us here on the show. Matt, we've seen a shift in the odds, as I mentioned here, at the top 3 of the NFL draft. This can happen before the draft begins, but not usually this far out. Any reasoning for this?
Well, I think there's been a little more intel that the Commanders like Daniels at number 2, and people feel pretty confident in that. And look, there's always weird stuff that can happen, but we know who's going 1, and if we think we know who's going 2 now, then there you go. I think that explains it. But we don't know for sure, of course, and a lot can still happen. But I would say that's why it shifted more to people really feeling good about that top 3 order.
Do you like one of those 3 more than another? Do you think there's any shot that McCarthy could slip into the 3 spot?
I'd be very surprised. I think that would maybe require a trade. I don't see the Patriots trading at this point, but it's the NFL draft and you never know, so it could happen. But no, I'm not. I don't think McCarthy's going 3. There's a lot of smoke around that. There's been smoke around him going 2, but I would be very surprised if that happened at this point for sure.
All right, so let's dive more into McCarthy here because he seems to be one of the bigger wild cards in the draft. His draft position over on FanDuel is 5.5. If he goes higher than that, over that, 5.5 plus 116, under that, minus 154. This is the part of the season where the quarterbacks get the helium, as we say, Matt. And then, players who we thought would go at 20 go at 3. Players who we thought would go in the second round of quarterback go in the first. What do you make of that number?
It's an interesting number. There was a couple of weeks ago where I was going around boldly proclaiming he's going 4 by hook or by crook, one way or another. He'll go 4. And then I sort of calmed down, thought about it, and I don't necessarily think that anymore. I because of Marvin Harrison Jr. being there at 4, because of the Chargers there at 5 and their need for an elite pass catcher, and there being at least 3 after Harrison Jr. on the board, counting Brock Bowers, I think they're going 4 and 5. So unless there is a trade up and McCarthy goes 3, I think he's going under that number. Now there is better value on the other end of it though, and there is still a chance because the Cardinals could trade out. They need picks. They need a lot of players. It's possible the Chargers trade out because they could still get the other wide receiver. They could still get Bowers. They could still get an offensive lineman if Jim Harbaugh wants to go that way. We know he likes to run, and you need offensive linemen for that. So it's definitely still in the cards. I wouldn't completely rule it off the table, but I do think he's going 6 or later at this point. But it's going to be a fascinating subplot. And as soon as a trade happens, if a trade happens, then you're going to see obviously those odds shift in a hurry.
Yeah, no, you will. And how about the team to take him? You mentioned New England at 3-1. They're still up the top here as a possibility. And I know that we've heard about the chance of trading out, which would mean that they wouldn't take McCarthy there. They still could get him later. And so that's kind of the point here, Matt. If some team thinks that they can move down and get the player, it would change things. The Vikings right now still searching for a quarterback. Matt, they're plus 160. New England 3-1. The Giants are about 4-1. We know Denver is going to come out of this draft with someone. They're plus 850.
Yeah, I think it's the Vikings and the Broncos is who you're looking at there. You're right about the Patriots, whether it's they take them in a surprise or they move down because the Vikings say trade up to take May and then New England gets them. All possibilities, of course, but I think you're looking at which one of the two teams between the Vikings and Broncos is going to pull off the trade to move up, outmaneuver the other, and take them. That really feels like where we're at right now. The Vikings have more picks in their arsenal to do that. So whether both teams stay put where they are or the Vikings make that deal, it's much more likely to be the Vikings.
All right. Now another wild card as far as a lot of the bets are concerned over at FanDuel is regarding one of the final potential quarterbacks to go in the first round. Right now, the guy with that position is Bo Nix. And on FanDuel, his number is 32.5. So right on the fringe there. Minus 220 on the over. The under is plus 162. Where he goes is going to determine a lot of this stuff on draft night.
It will. Now, you say final quarterback to go in the first round. I think not only do I think Penix could go over Nix, I don't think I'd bet on that, but I think it's a possibility. But there's also the possibility Penix just goes in the first round after Nix. So to me, Penix is the guy that I would look for for final quarterback to go in the first round, if you're looking at who's going to go first, Nix or Penix, I still like Nix there. But it's very close. I think closer than a lot of people realize.
All right. And then finally, let's take care of one more. Offensive linemen in the NFL draft, the amount of players taken in round one, over 9.5 on FanDuel's minus 194. Matt, under is plus 144. Generally speaking, we see a ton of these guys go in the first round because quarterbacks are the most important, and then who protects them are next. Do you like either of these numbers here?
Yeah, those are high numbers. On Sporting News, we have 9. So we're right there. I mean, we're right on the number with our mock draft. So I think it's very close. I do think if it's going to sort of surprise, it'll surprise going over. Let me put it that way. There are a lot of wide receivers and corners in this draft, so there could be a run on both of those too. So it's definitely a tough number if teams move up for those, and it just kind of pushes the offensive lineman back. But I do think there's a good chance that number goes over.
All right, Matt. Enjoy the draft. We'll catch up after. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It's when he swung it easy at three-quarter golf swings, and he pretty much hit his number all the time. Dude, but when he hit something full, he hit it 20 yards over the greens at times. He was like, what are you doing?
He's just smiley, happy, and a freakish athlete golf robot that's going to be right there winning majors for the next 10-plus years. It's amazing.
Did you say he was smiling or smiley?
Only on SportsGrid.
They're still the best. They're still the champs. Everyone wants to crown the Celtics the champions, but that's not the way it works. They got to beat them. And, they got to get through the East, which isn't going to be fun to begin with. Everyone thinks it's so automatic.
If it's just Boris is kind of losing his power, if whatever his tactics have been, yeah, move on.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Talked about the Ohtani story. This interpreter, Ipe, clearly was a problem gambler. I mean, he would be identified as that and beyond. Now, there are a lot of others that are out there.
The timing didn't seem great. It seemed slightly tone deaf in terms of, maybe now isn't the time to say it. But the sentiment itself, you have to agree with. There's only so much a sports betting company can do, right?
NewsWire. Only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
NewsWire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from three on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live. Prime time.
We got not one, but 2 coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage Late
Sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. We close out our week with our guest from Legal Sports Report today. It's Jim Gazzale joins us here on the show. We're going to get an update on Kentucky sports betting, also a recap of the month of March from North Carolina. And Jim, great to have you back here on NewsWire. I guess we will dive right in. Why not? Let's start off with the sports betting tax rate in New York, which is, certainly been the barometer for a lot of other states here in the country. We're seeing a lot of other states want to be where New York is, which is at that 51%. I guess, that's come under, some scrutiny from the sports betting operators because they think it's too much. The state thinks it's just right. Other states want to follow the suit in New York. Do you think that this ends up coming to fruition for these other states? And do you think New York has simply just set the bar for where everybody wants to be?
Yeah, it's a good question, really. And, I think a little bit remains to be seen where some of these states will go. We've already seen Ohio increase their tax rate. They doubled it from 10% to 20% within the first couple of months after legalizing sports betting. We saw that happen last year. New Jersey currently discussing in their state legislature increasing the sports betting tax rate. And Illinois is doing the same thing. And I thought it was an interesting time to reach out to some people that worked in New York State government as these early sports betting conversations were going on, and just to kind of get a sense of the challenges around adjusting tax policy kind of after the fact, right? I think we see a lot of these lawmakers kind of looking at New York and its 51% tax rate and seeing just how much money the state is making from sports betting right now, and kind of feeling like perhaps maybe they left a little bit of money on the table. So I spoke to Rich Azzopardi. He was Governor Cuomo here in New York, Governor Cuomo's senior advisor in the last couple of years of that administration. And he was, intimately involved in those sports betting conversations as regulators and the operators were kind of talking back and forth, trying to figure out this tax rate. And they ultimately settled on 51%. And he told me that, they were kind of agnostic towards sports betting as a whole. They kind of figured that it was coming. But once the COVID-19 pandemic happened and the state was feeling a little bit of a fiscal crisis, they really needed something to drive more revenue and kind of help them balance that budget and kind of, clear a couple of financial gaps. So sports betting, in their view, was one of the more palatable options. And that 51% tax rate, he told me, came from the state budget department just really saying, what's it going to take for it to be worth it for the state? And that's kind of where they settled. And ultimately, he told me, too, that the operators had no choice in agreeing to it. They knew that New York was going to be a huge market, like we've talked about for the last several months, Craig, just month after month after month, big numbers in terms of overall betting handle, big numbers in terms of operator revenue, and therefore state tax revenue. So Rich, as a party, was telling me that these operators really had no choice. They've gone in front of the legislature in recent years and said that this tax rate, 51%, is unsustainable, and perhaps that in the future they'll have to make the odds on certain bets a little bit less advantageous for bettors, more advantageous for the operators. To date, though, those threats seem to be a bit hollow, as we have not seen that sort of happening in New York yet. But I thought it was an interesting time to talk to the former administration here in New York when all of that stuff was legalizing. Like I said off the top, Illinois currently discussing increasing their tax rate, New Jersey discussing it as well. So we'll see how those legislatures kind of handle the issue of tax policy around sports betting, like you said, too, kind of using New York as a guide here over the last couple of years.
All right, let's move from North Carolina, from New York to North Carolina. $659 million in the first month of bets surrounding the NCAA tournament. What an incredible success story.
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty gaudy number off the top, Craig. And, keep in mind, too, that this was for 20 days of wagering. March 11th was launch day in North Carolina. So $659.3 million in betting over those 3 weeks, a little less than 3 weeks there. But we do have to keep in mind I think there's some caveats involved in here. The promotional spending from the operators was, as one might expect during a launch month, a lot, $202.6 million. So nearly a third of that $659 million total was promotional spending, free bets, odds boosts, things of that nature, to customer acquisition costs, if you will, to get you on the app and playing. So, $457 million of real money from the bettors, still a substantial amount wagered in those first 20 days. And when I saw this, my brain kind of took me to Ohio and their launch at the beginning of 2023. They had over $1 billion in bets that January, and the operators there dished out about $300+ million in promos. So, kind of comparing Ohio to North Carolina right off the bat there in that first month, it was sort of reflective of that percent of promos to overall handle. So those two kind of align there. Obviously, just 20 days of wagering data, still way too early to get any sort of sense of what the overall market might hold here in the future. But I think a good start. Again, like I said, those promos certainly high in the beginning, and will certainly fall off like we see just about everywhere else. One other interesting note too that I thought too of in North Carolina, like we've talked about the last couple of weeks, Craig, NASCAR. I mentioned a few weeks ago about how NASCAR is really banking on North Carolina to be a successful market for them. We also talked recently too, Craig, about the PGA Tour and golf betting. They're banking on North Carolina being a popular state for them. So as we get through the summer months where, NASCAR and golf, along with baseball, tend to be things that bettors might focus on, I'll be interested to see just how popular NASCAR and golf are in North Carolina, considering those sports governing bodies, if you will. We're pretty bullish on North Carolina to really increase some handle. So those are a couple of things that I'll be focused on with North Carolina over the next couple of months.
Yeah, and certainly North Carolina's focus for sports betting is the NCAA tournament in March. In the, of course, months of May and June, sports bettors are all flocking, of course, especially in May, to Kentucky for the Kentucky Derby. I know over at Legal Sports Report, you guys had an article with Gabe Pruitt, the vice president of race and sports wagering over at Red Mile, talking about the challenges of sports betting in person, the retail market, and certainly want you to expand on what you guys learned.
Yeah, so the retail market in Kentucky, I've been a little bit fascinated with it just because of the tie-in with the horse tracks there, where you have the retail sports books placed at the racetrack. So Churchill Downs in Louisville, their in-person sports book on the grounds there at the track is the most popular place to bet in person in terms of handle. Red Mile in Lexington is the most profitable in terms of operator in-person revenue so far in Kentucky, second most popular in terms of handle. So obviously the two big population centers in Kentucky, Louisville and Lexington, make sense that you would see those two be the two most popular in-person locations for retail sports betting in Kentucky. A couple of interesting notes to begin the year in Kentucky, just an overall sports betting handle. DraftKings continues to inch up its share of online handle in Kentucky. They had about 40% of all the bets in February. That was up from 38%. in January, and just the top three sportsbooks there, online sportsbooks in terms of overall betting volume: DraftKings, FanDuel, and Caesars, in that order. So, I think the market itself still, in the early days. They only opened up in September. I'm going to be talking to some folks at FanDuel and DraftKings for some Kentucky Derby coverage over the next couple of weeks. So I'll be curious to see from them, and I'm going to ask them just how much crossover they've seen between sports and horses, especially in Kentucky. It's going to be the first Derby with legal sports betting. So I'm just interested to see how they plan to kind of marry those two, or what the strategy is to see any sort of growth between sports and horses, especially in Kentucky now.
Yeah, well, Churchill Downs will be packed no matter what, whether they have sports betting in person there or not. It doesn't matter, as you know, Jim, but that's coming up next month. Thanks again for coming on NewsWire. We'll talk again next week.
All right. Thanks for having me, Craig.
All right, coming up next, a look at the NBA playoffs. Coach Young is in the house, Coach's Corner, to break it all down. We'll be right back.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It's when he swung it easy at three-quarter golf swings, and he pretty much hit his number all the time. Dude, but when he hit something full, he hit it 20 yards over the greens at times. He was like, what are you doing?
He's just smiley, happy, and a freakish athlete golf robot that's going to be right there winning majors for the next 10-plus years. It's amazing.
Did you say he was smiling or smiley?
Only on SportsGrid.
They're still the best. They're still the champs. Everyone wants to crown the Celtics the champions, but that's not the way it works. They got to beat them. And, they got to get through the East, which isn't going to be fun to begin with. Everyone thinks it's so automatic.
If it's just Boris is kind of losing his power, if whatever his tactics have been, yeah, move on.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Talked about the Ohtani story. This interpreter, Ipe, clearly was a problem gambler. I mean, he would be identified as that and beyond. Now, there are a lot of others that are out there.
The timing didn't seem great. It seemed slightly tone deaf in terms of, maybe now isn't the time to say it. But the sentiment itself, you have to agree with. There's only so much a sports betting company can do, right?
NewsWire. Only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
NewsWire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from three on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live. Prime time.
We got not one, but two coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage Late
This sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to Newswire here on Sports Grid. We know that there's a lot of people interested in the NBA playoffs, and certainly tonight's game has a lot of interest for me. It has a lot of interest for Coach Young, who's going to join us next. But I think the most interest, Coach, is going to be the Oklahoma City Thunder. They're the ones that in this scenario that are all going to be locked in watching this game, because the winner of this West play-in game will play Oklahoma City Thunder. And I think that's a great place to start, Coach. And thanks for coming in on Newswire. How are you?
Thanks for having me on, Craig. Obviously, two big games in the NBA tonight. The playoffs are officially here. We got through March Madness, so I guess it's April Madness, May Madness, June Madness, whatever madness it is. It's time for the playoffs.
Yeah, let's start tonight with the Sacramento Kings, who clearly are playing without one of their big stars, but so are the Pelicans, with both Malik Monk out and, of course, Zion Williamson out on the other side. Kevin Huerter is out, of course, again for Sacramento. The Kings are 1.5-point favorites against New Orleans. I love the way they played that last game against Golden State. Do you think they can continue and build off that momentum and get through to be the 8th seed in the West?
I would love to say yes, but the answer is no. If you just saw the way that Zion was a couple of nights ago with his 40-point performance, he literally carried that team, the Pelicans, and unfortunately with the hamstring injury, he is out. This has been something that's been bothering, Zion, not just the hamstring, just any kind of injury over his career, just can't seem to stay healthy. So when you start looking at it, you look at the fact that obviously Malik Monk and Kevin Huerter, both of their two guards, are out for Sacramento. But then you start looking at this, you think about this, right? They have played 4 times this year, right? The last 3 games that they have played have all been won by the Pelicans. 135, 123, 133, 100, 127, 117. So you got a team that's won 3 in a row, right? And now here comes a hobbled team, and obviously the Pelicans without Zion. I just looked at the way Brandon Ingram played. He did not look right. He even got benched and I would say major minutes in the fourth quarter, which was really surprising for a guy of his stature. I really do like Sacramento on the road to get the job done here and get the win. I think losing Zion is going to be a little bit too much for the Pelicans to handle.
All right, Sacramento -1.5 tonight. Now, the next question, Coach, is can the Miami Heat survive and move on without Jimmy Butler? But not just him, without Terry Rozier as well. The Heat just 1.5-point favorites tonight against the Chicago Bulls. The total 205.5. Now, the other day here on the show, when we were breaking this down, Coach, here's what I said, and I'll say the same thing. I have no idea which Heat team is going to show up tonight. You got to wait until they get through it, if they do, to even sort of handicap which team they're going to be. Because they could win tonight, Coach, by 30. They could lose tonight by 10. I have no idea. Do you have a lean on this game tonight?
Well, when you look at it, you go to one game scenario. Who's the better coach? Spo. Who's got more playoff experience? The Heat. Who's got what I think is the best player on the floor? I still think it's Bam Adebayo. Who can, in one game, without a star, win? It's Miami. So to me, until the Heat get knocked out, I can't go against them. Craig, in this same spot last year, they lost a 7-8 game and then won the second game, and then they turned around and they knocked off the 1 seed and went all the way to the final. So to me, I can never sit here and write off an Eric Spoelstra team. I have not trusted the Chicago Bulls team at all. I know they beat Atlanta. That means absolutely nothing to me. I'm going to go and I'm going to take Miami on the money line because the number is short. So I'm going to take the money line for the Miami Heat. Obviously, like we said, no Rozier, no Jimmy Butler. But you know what? Tyler Hero's playing. Bam Adebayo's playing. Martin is playing. Duncan Robinson may come off the bench, hit a couple of shots. There is enough there to put a belief in the Miami Heat will get the job done. I'm going to go with the Heat on the money line, and I'm going to go over. I think there's going to be more points here because if I'm Chicago, I'm going to try and make this a little bit more of a track meet. I think the game goes over. Looking at about 210 plus, I think will be the total.
All right, fair enough. Tonight, that game will be played in South Florida. Now, this weekend, of course, we have the rest of the NBA playoffs, and the Los Angeles Lakers fought their way back once again but their reward is playing the Denver Nuggets again, Coach. And look, honestly, the playoffs last year, the games were sort of close. You could have seen the Lakers win maybe a game or two. They did not. The odds makers are telling us it's not happening. Denver is 7.5-point favorites to open up here. Total of 224. I guess historically is the question I would ask, Coach. When a team gets in through the play-in and they have these matchups where they simply haven't been able to beat the other team, they have the one guy where the mental aspect doesn't matter in LeBron James. But I guess, would it matter in the first game of the series?
Well, I think, listen, if the Lakers have a chance, they got to find a way to get a split here, right? And a Lakers team that's been up and down. Yes, are they playing some of their best basketball as of late? Absolutely. Winners of 3 in a row. They've won, I think, 7 out of their last 10 games. But let's be honest, Greg, Denver's coming down the stretch, playing really good basketball. Forget the 121-120 loss against San Antonio. They went and they thumped Minnesota by 9. They went at Memphis, ended the regular season, won by 15. They've played really good basketball, and I think as time turns up, I'm concerned about the mile high up there. If you look at the games, Craig, last year, the 4-0 sweep, especially the 2 games in Denver, the Lakers played them close, and it was the fourth quarter. And if you look at any kind of thing for this year, the Lakers still can't beat them. Lost by 10, lost by 8, lost by 12, right? They can't beat this team. And the line is 7.5. Give me the Denver Nuggets. They win by about 10 points tomorrow against the Lakers.
Now, in your neck of the woods, Coach, we have the New York Knicks. Their gift for the number 2 seed was facing off with Joel Embiid and the Philadelphia 76ers. What a nice gift for them coming up in the NBA playoffs. And that's why I got beef with this whole system and how it works. The 76ers coast their way without Joel Embiid, get their way in. Now they're like either even or favored to win the series. At the Garden, Knicks only -3. I mean, what does that tell you, Coach? It means that the odds makers are telling us that Philly's got a great shot to not only win this game, but win the series.
Yeah, and I think here's what's going to happen, folks. The Knicks, when they got OG Anunoby, I think it's like 19-3, some crazy record. He's got the best plus-minus in the NBA since he's been in New York. They're a different team now, and I think what I saw out of Philadelphia in the game versus Miami is, I think Joel Embiid is still compromised. I think he can't move. So if I'm the Knicks, what do? I run. I make this a little bit more of an up-tempo game. They're able to do that without Julius Randle because Julius Randle is more of a plotter. You look at Mitchell Robinson, back should give him something. This guy, Dante DiVincenzo, has been outstanding, probably the best shooter in the NBA second half of the year. But that guy right there, Josh Hart, is going to play a big role. Josh Hart has had a couple of that, barely had any triple doubles in his career. Ever went to the starting lineup, has been kind of that facilitator. Look for a big game by Josh Hart, maybe rebounds plus assists as he gets the rebound and pushes the pace. I think New York wins, but here's the thing: at -146, I'm not going to play around with the points, Craig. I'm going to take the Knicks on a money line at home. I think it's going to be an absolutely raucous Madison Square Garden tip-off at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Give me the Knicks on the money line to get the win.
As Coach said, -146 there. Okay, now a tough series to handicap has to be this Minnesota-Phoenix series because Phoenix has the pedigree. They've got Kevin Durant. They've got a lot of experience being in this spot. Minnesota is back and trying to make a deep run in the playoffs for the first time in a long time. Timberwolves only 2-point favorites to open up in game 1 with a total of 214, Coach. And I expect this to be, 6-game series, 7-game series, as long as it could potentially go. What do you make of the outcome here?
When you really look at this, this is where it doesn't matter about seeding, right, Craig? It comes down to respect, right? And they're going to give the respect to the team with the more experience, right? This Minnesota team has not been there, has not done it. Even though these guys are first year together, Booker's done it. KD has done it. Not so much Bradley Beal, first time in the spot. Grayson Allen's done it, right? So to me, you look at the matchup, Craig, they have played 3 times this season. What have I told you? All 3 games won by Phoenix. What have I told you? All 3 games won by Phoenix by double digits. That means they're going to be in this game. And I think for them, their thought process is if you steal game 1 against a team with home court advantage, then doubt starts to creep in. I think Frank Vogel and them try to throw the knockout punch right from the jump because the line is they're getting 2 points, I'm not going to take it on the money line. I'll just take Phoenix plus the points. I actually think this is not a great matchup for Minnesota because of the fact that Nurkic can try to contain Rudy Gobert off the boards. And I don't think there's enough perimeter defenders to stop Beal, Booker, and KD. If this team is healthy in Phoenix, this team can legitimately go on a run and get to the finals. They do have that much high-end talent and talent that can create their own shot.
Interesting matchup also as we close it out between Orlando and Cleveland. And Coach, unfortunately, this is the matchup going into the NBA playoffs that when the NBA schedules their games, they're like, put this game first. We want our stars playing later. I get there's some stars on both sides. I get it. But this is not the sexiest of NBA matchups. There's not a lot of star power here. Cleveland had themselves a great year. Orlando had a surprising year. And I think that's why Cleveland is favored to win the series and favored to win game one. They're 4.5-point favorites as they open up with a total of 208.
Yeah, this is going to be an intriguing series between a team in Cleveland that I think is that there is an immense amount of pressure on. There's been talk of TJ Bickerstaff, JB Bickerstaff, I should say. If they don't win this series, he could be gone. There's the talk of Donovan Mitchell, the fact that he basically said before and a couple of weeks ago that if they don't make it to the finals, he's not going to extend. There's the talk of the Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. Doesn't think it's going to work. Versus an Orlando team that really has overachieved. This team has arrived a year or 2 years too early. You can look at the play of Paolo Banchero ascending himself to maybe a top 25, maybe even in some people's minds, top 20 player in the NBA. But to me, this is where Bickerstaff and his team has to at least get game one. If they don't get game one, Craig, all the talk of last year are getting punched by the Knicks, by a physical team, an aggressive team. That comes back to haunt them. They don't, Wendell Carter Jr. is a good center, but they don't have that muscle guy like a Mitchell Robinson that gave Mobley and Allen the fits that Mitchell Robinson and Hartenstein did last year. So I'm going to go with Cleveland minus the points. I think they get game one. This is going to be a long series, and I think this could be one of the more intriguing series, although it's probably the one out of all the 8 we're going to talk about, Craig, that people don't want to talk about because you're right, it doesn't have the star power behind it.
Yeah, but could still be a great series, and I think that will capture people's attention, hopefully the case. All right, Coach, appreciate you coming on. I know this is a tough week for you and your family, and my condolences to you, certainly, and thanks again for appearing back here on NewsWire. And, I understand it's been tough for you, and we really appreciate you making the time for us. Thanks again.
Thank you. My mom was a big fan of the show and of SportsGrid, and she wants me to get back to work, so Coach has got to work.
All right, Coach Young with us with a heavy heart working for us here on NewsWire. All right, coming up next, the University of Miami women's basketball team got a piece of interesting news yesterday. We'll tell you what that is next.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York team has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It's when he swung it easy at three-quarter golf swings, and he pretty much hit his number all the time. Dude, but when he hit something full, he hit it 20 yards over the greens at times. He's like, what are you doing?
He's just smiley, happy, and a freakish athlete golf robot that's going to be right there winning majors for the next 10-plus years. It's amazing.
Did you say he was smiling or smiley?
Only on SportsGrid.
They're still the best. They're still the champs. Everyone wants to crown the Celtics the champions, but that's not the way it works. They got to beat them. And, they got to get through the East, which isn't going to be fun to begin with. Everyone thinks it's so automatic.
If it's just Boris is kind of losing his power, if whatever his tactics have been, yeah, move on.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
We talked about the Ohtani story. This interpreter, Ipe, clearly was a problem gambler. I mean, he would be identified as that and beyond. Now, there are a lot of others that are out there.
The timing didn't seem great. It seemed slightly tone deaf in terms of, maybe now isn't the time to say it. But the sentiment itself, you have to agree with. There's only so much a sports betting company can do, right?
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
NewsWire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from three on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live. Prime time.
We got not one, but two coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. The University of Miami women's basketball team gets a familiar face or two who look like each other, fair to say, back on their team. The Cavender twins have been reunited at the University of Miami. What a surprise. After taking a year off, Haley Cavender, who was thought to play at TCU this upcoming college basketball season, has decided to return to the University of Miami to play with her sister Hannah. Both of them will be back for the Hurricanes for one final season, which they have for eligibility. They took a year off to do social media and TikTok and make some money on the side with these NIL deals and everything else. But a lot of fun, and they do a great job, I think, posting and social media. And look, if they can make money doing that as opposed to playing basketball, more power to them. I would imagine especially Haley could potentially be playing in the WNBA next season or maybe even beyond that. So they will be back, and seeing the success that Caitlin Clark had in college basketball shouldn't be a huge surprise that they're returning to play again for their final season of eligibility in Coral Gables. All right, that will do it for our week of shows today. Thanks again to Jim Gazzale from Legal Sports Report, Coach Young for talking some college basketball, and Matt Lutovsky from Sporting News. We've got the early line coming up next, followed by Pharrell Coast to Coast, and then, of course, our evening programming, in-game live, game time decisions, and breakdowns of the NBA play-in games in the West and East tonight. For tomorrow's show, I will be back with you hosting Fantasy Sports Today at 8 a.m. Eastern with George Kurtz. So those of you who are interested in fantasy sports programming, whether it's fantasy baseball or a look at the NFL draft, make sure you tune in at 8 a.m. Eastern for Fantasy Sports Today. Sunday morning, it'll be Joe Pisapia and Matt Stryker covering the NFL draft and also some Major League Baseball as well. Now, those of you who are checking out for the weekend, I'll see you right back here for our next edition of the show. It's draft week on SportsGrid, so expect a lot of content coming from us on the upcoming NFL draft next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday right here on SportsGrid. Once again, thanks for tuning in to our week of shows. Thanks again to our producer, Frank, for filling in all week long for Michael Cohen. Great job, Frank. I'll see you back here Monday morning. Have a great weekend. And don't forget, it's smarter to be on SportsGrid.